For as long as I've been here, 14 years, we've always had 2 meetings in the month of June because everybody wants to do the 4th of July and want to invite everybody here Saturday night, which is going to start Saturday afternoon for the 4th of July with the fireworks and so forth and so on. With that being said, I want to thank everybody for coming to Jeffrey Spencer. Where's Jeffrey? Where's Jeffrey and my birthday party. What a great way to be surrounded by folks that like you. So thank y'all for being here tonight. And since it was my birthday, I took a few liberties tonight and invited one of my closest and dearest friends, who I absolutely love as a brother. He's a great citizen of Farmville, and he is as close to me as, well, we just come from 2 different mamas. That's the only way I can say it. Very dear friend, I've asked Reverend Richard Darden to lead us in the invocation, and Brenda Elks will lead us in the pledge. So if you'll join us and stand for that now, I certainly would appreciate it. Reverend Darden, the podium's yours, sir.
Shall we pray? Our Father in heaven, we come now, first of all, to tell you thank you. Thank you, God, for another town board meeting. We invoke your presence right now. We pray now, God, for your wisdom and your guidance as we come together tonight to make decisions for every citizen of the community. God, we pray now, Lord, that as we carry out this meeting, that your grace and mercy be among us. We thank you now, Lord, for this great board that you have put in place. We thank you for their love, their care that they have in heart for the town and citizens of Farmville. Have your way. We're going to thank you now for what's going to be accomplished on this agenda tonight. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Amen.
Brenda, if you'd lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be seated. Get comfortable. We're going to be here a while. We got a lot going on. Before I go to citizens' comments, I'd like to, this is one of many that we received. It says just a short note to thank you for taking care of the sinkhole in my yard for a great job. The town's done a great job, and I appreciate that. That is from Alan and Mary Steinbauer, and we appreciate that. I paraphrased it because it was quite lengthy. So Wes, you and your team have done it again, and I thank you for that. If you're following along on your agenda tonight, you'll notice the first thing that we have is citizens' presentation. This is where you have 3 minutes to discuss things that are pertinent to the operation of the town and the business of Farmville. All those having business before the town will be heard tonight. At the end of the meeting, you'll also see there's citizens' comments, again, where you can ask questions about anything that you saw or heard here tonight that you may need just a little more information about. There will be a closed session tonight, which is something that this board has not had very many of, and I'm thankful for that. But this is the time of the year where we do have that closed session. So, with that being said, we have one person on our agenda tonight to speak. AC? We just ask that you give your name and your address for the benefit of the for the video that'll be shown on Channel 8.
Salam. I just wanted to address, and I've already talked to one of the department heads about public meetings being available to the public in all forms. Since internet is not a basic utility, and since cable is not a basic utility, then it is incumbent upon all public committees to have their public meetings accessible to the public. If 2 meetings are being held, public meetings are being held at the same time in different locations, that means it cuts out the access to one of the meetings. Also, public meetings should also be in public venues. For a long time, one of our public committees has met in private venues, and so it is not available for public perusal, public scrutiny, and, public witness. And that is our Tree and Appearance Committee or whatever. It used to be held in Bonnie's. I don't know where it's held now. But for a very long time, that public meeting has not been very public at all. So that is what I wanted to address.
We thank you. Next, we have the manager's comments. One of the things I've asked the manager to do tonight is kind of give us a recap of the year that we've had. And I'm going to go ahead and say a couple of things on that before he gets started. We have had a phenomenal year, and I thank the town employees for that. I thank the town manager for his leadership, and I thank this board for the many, many hours that you have put in, which I will address here in a few moments about the work you've done. So David, with that being said, the room is yours, sir.
Okay, thank you, Mayor, members of the board. I just had a few comments here, announcements. As the mayor mentioned earlier, we have a July 4th celebration, or Independence Day celebration, excuse me, which is scheduled for Saturday, July 3rd. We did not have it last year because of COVID, so we are getting back into the normal schedule. Events on the town common from 6 to 9:30 p.m. We've got music by P&J Saxophone Ensemble. The Tar River Band has not been practicing and has not been together since COVID, and so they were not able to play. They hopefully will be coming back in future years. Fireworks at nightfall, hot dogs and drinks being sold by Parks and Rec to benefit the football program, buy some football equipment for our program, and also ice cream being sold by Jones Fruit Farm, which is our normal vendor for that. We also have National Night Out coming up on Tuesday, August 3rd. If you've been on Facebook, you've seen Miss Linda put things all over the place. She's gotten the word out and gotten all sorts of exciting vendors and programs and games and things that she's planned. So that is coming out, or coming on August 3rd. It'll be on, I guess, two fields, one across the street, across Walnut Street that Phil Lewis owns, and also over on our soccer and multi-purpose field. And as I said, food, fun, games, be a great night. That's from 6 to 9 p.m. And then also wanted to mention that this is our 2022, as it's been mentioned before, is our Farmville 150-year celebration. That committee's been meeting, had several meetings to date. It's finalizing plans for some exciting events. Should have a calendar of events available sometime very soon, but some events will be starting beginning in August, being National Night Out being one of those items, or probably the first event, and culminating with the town's 150th birthday on February 12th, 2022. Lots of exciting events to announce as they become available and that calendar gets released. And then lastly, the splash pad, there's been a lot of mention about that. Construction is on schedule, and we plan for it to be open on July 3rd. We'll have more information as we know exactly what the hour that it will be open and exactly how that will be done. I think the mayor may have some additional comments on that. That's a very exciting project. It seems to be very popular. Everybody I've talked to is very excited that's coming, and that's all I have for right now. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody have any questions of the town manager? Seeing none? Well,
I do.
Go ahead.
On the splash pad, when will we get something about how much the charge is going to be? I know you said that the hours and stuff we'll decide a little bit later on as to what goes on, but like how much we're going to charge people? And
No, zero.
Zero.
Initially, zero.
Initially, okay.
So that, I don't know that down the road, I'm not sure if I'm sorry, right there in front of me. I'm not sure, that has not been determined beyond the initial few months or year or so, but there will be no charge initially. As far as the hours, Diana and I were talking about earlier today, and that's still to be determined, but basically it's going to be a, morning and then some evening hours in the summer, obviously, while the sun's still out. We'll have some opportunity for parents, who work to take their children after work, so there will be some hours at night and probably a 9 or 10 in the morning type start time, but that's all will be determined, and that'll be all announced before opening.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
And David, would you go ahead and address a term, soft opening? That needs to be qualified. It's a great idea. It's proven to work. So
Okay, and that's something that back in the dark ages, I was in retail before I actually got into management, and we always had soft openings in new stores, and that's where you actually open a facility or store or whatever, and it's open to customers, but you're still getting all the bugs out. Maybe something isn't exactly right, or maybe your staff needs a little bit more training, that kind of thing. So you open up to customers or whoever's patrons or whatever, and but it's not your big glitzy grand opening. It's just, you're open. And then you work out a few things, and like, for instance, splash pad, it'll be open, but there's still, some dressing up around there to do. There's a fence to put up. There's maybe some grass seeding, sodding, or whatever. That kind of thing. Maybe some adjustments to some of the heads on the splash pad equipment or features, which we're trying to work out now. So it's just we're open, we want people to use it, but then there'll be some more formal, like ribbon cutting and, grand opening type event with dignitaries and that kind of thing, maybe later on, perhaps maybe a month down the road or something. So the soft opening would be July 3rd. If you remember, the library opened in April, a few weeks before the official opening, and then open on May 3rd or May 11th for, the ceremony and all that. So it's similar to that. It's open to users of the facility, but it's not the official glitzy, invite all your friends and dignitaries grand opening, if that answers the question.
Anybody else have anything? Wes, you got anything you want to add about the splash pad? Diane, you have anything? We'll move on. You have the financial report in front of you. Are there any questions for Amy concerning the financial report? Seeing none, we'll move to the next item. Changes, additions, deletions to the agenda. And earlier this afternoon, you received a request to add 2 items to the agenda. One was the Dalton Cove sanitary sewer improvement and the adoption of ordinance amending the capital project budget for construction of the new library. David, do you want to address these in any way, or you just want us to get it on the agenda?
And Amy can weigh in too. These are just things like we're trying to close out or balance out certain projects before the end of the year, because we know the auditor want us to do that. So these are more or less housekeeping items, and would be sort of companions to your year-end budget amendments that you also have at your place that is already on the agenda. So these, there's nothing new in there. It's just trying to get all the numbers straight before the end of the fiscal year.
Board, could I get a motion to add Dalton's Cove to the agenda as item number 9?
I'll make that motion that we add that to item number 9 to the agenda.
Commissioner Elks has made a motion that we add agenda item number 9 will be the Dalton's Cove sanitary sewer improvement. Any discussion there? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. That'll be agenda item number 9. Request to add agenda item number 10, the adoption of ordinance amending the capital project budget for the construction of the new library. Is there a motion that we add that as item number 10?
I'll make a motion to add that item number 10.
Commissioner Smith has made a motion that we accept the library as agenda item number 10. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, the ayes have it. That will be added as item 9 and number 10. That brings us down to a special presentation. Linda, you and I have waited a long time for this. Come on up here, girl. This is not your official document. The official document is downstairs. What I have here is a proclamation for the National Night Out, which is the first event of the 2022 committee that's in Farmville, which is celebrating 150 years. And you'll be hearing a lot about National Night Out. You'll hear about fireworks, the gay ball, spring, February the 12th, which will be the actual date of the 150th anniversary. And there are other things that are going along with that. You'll also have an opportunity to participate in the plaque that's being designed as we speak. My dear friend, Proclamation Night Out 2021. Whereas the North Carolina Association of Town Watch is sponsoring a unique nationwide crime and drug violence prevention program Tuesday, August the 3rd, 2021, called National Night Out. And whereas the 38th Annual National Night Out provides a unique opportunity for the town of Farmville to join forces with the thousands of other communities across the country in promoting cooperative, also police community crime prevention and efforts. And whereas the town of Farmville Community Watch Association plays a vital role in assisting the town of Farmville Police Department through joint crime, drug, and violence prevention efforts of the town of Farmville and supporting the National Night Out 2021 locally. And whereas it is essential that all citizens in the town of Farmville be aware of the importance of crime programs and the impact of their participation can be reducing crime, drugs, and violence in the town of Farmville. And whereas the police community partnerships, neighborhood safety awareness, and corporations are important themes for the National Night Out program. Therefore, we, the town of Farmville, the town of Farmville Mayor, the Board of Commissioners, do hereby call upon all the citizens of the town of Farmville to join the Town of Farmville Community Watch Association and the National Association of Town Watch in supporting the 38th Annual National Night Out, Tuesday, August the 3rd, 2021. Further, let it be resolved that we, the Town of Farmville Mayor and Board of Commissioners, do hereby proclaim Tuesday, August the 3rd, 2021 as National Night Out in the Town of Farmville, Pitt County, North Carolina. This date, June the 28th, 2021. Signed, John Moore, on behalf of the Town Board. And I'll get rid of that. I would add that Linda is looking for some volunteers because she is expecting a tremendous crowd for this. She's done very well in the past, but this year we are expecting more people to come out than ever before. And Linda, on behalf of the Town of Farmville and the 2022 committee, I thank you for what you're doing there. It means an awful lot. That brings us down to item I for a public hearing to approve the development ordinance and text amendment. The ordinance amending Chapter 155 subdivision ordinance and Chapter 157 zoning ordinance, North Carolina General Statute 160D development ordinance amendment. Justin, is this you? Okay. Folks, this is a public hearing.
Evening, Mayor and Commissioners. So the item before you this evening, as you mentioned, this is the approval of amendments to two of our developmental ordinance chapters, our subdivision ordinance and our zoning ordinance. As you may recall, touched on briefly earlier this year during our retreat, the North Carolina General Statutes underwent a consolidated change in order to currently the developmental regulations for municipalities and the developmental regulations for counties are in two separate chapters of the general statutes. For municipalities, it's long been in Chapter 160A, and for counties in 153A. What they've sought to do is to consolidate the developmental ordinances for counties and municipalities to streamline the general statutes and to clear up any possible confusion that may have come across through the years as these statutes were amended. So what we have tonight is, and I'm going to go through, you have a PowerPoint presentation in your packet, and I will just try to briefly go through these. I want to stress that there's really no substantive change with these amendments. These are amendments that will basically bring our ordinance into compliance with North Carolina general statutes. As I told our planning board, and I've told a couple of you that I've spoken with about this, probably the biggest change that this board will notice that you'll see, we've long had special exception requests that went before our Board of Adjustment. Probably the biggest thing that you'll see from this will just be the requirement now that special exception applications are now being requested to be called special use permits, and this is being requested for counties and municipalities across the board. But that's probably going to be the most noticeable change that you will actually see. But I will go through this presentation with you briefly, and if you do have any questions, feel free to stop me as we're going along. I'll try to clarify those. So as I mentioned, Chapter 160D of the General Statutes is a complete reorganization and modernization of the state's planning and development regulation, and it's the first time this has been done since 1905. It repeals the previous enabling statutes, 153A for counties and 160A for municipalities. As I mentioned, this is consolidated into a single unified chapter, which is known as 160D. As far as the changes that we will see in our developmental ordinances, the first will be updating any North Carolina General Statute references that currently reference Chapter 160A, updating those to Chapter 160D. Next will be, as I mentioned, removing the special exception language, updating that to special use permit. Then we'll be looking at consistent terminology and definitions, broadening the conflict of interest standards and inserting a staff conflict of interest standard, requiring an oath of office for all of our planning board members, updating the ETJ or extraterritorial jurisdiction population, ensuring adequate representation, and then zoning amendment requirements and consistency statements. So as far as updating the North Carolina General Statute references, that was pretty straightforward, as I mentioned. Anything we have in our ordinance that references back to 160A, we will now be correcting to reference to the new statute 160D. Again, removing the special exception language, updating that to special use permit. No changes in that process, just a change in the name. Those requests will still come through the Board of Adjustment. They will make the ultimate decision on that. If the Board of Adjustment does decline a special use permit, the applicant would have a chance to appeal, in which that case it could potentially make it to the board. But other than that, nothing will change other than the name from special exception to special use.
Basically, what you just said, if the planning board says no, and they want to come to the board,
They can appeal. It's a little different than a legislative request like a rezoning because those requests go through the quasi-judicial process, so it's slightly different. Typically, I've never in my time here had one that went past the Board of Adjustment, but there's the possibility that could happen. So. There's a slide that has a lot of definitions or a lot of terms on here in which we will be checking the consistency of the definitions. Basically, what Chapter 160D sought to do was to streamline and make sure that the terminology was consistent across ordinances across the state. So a lot of these we have already in there in our ordinance, and we're just making sure that the definition that we have on our books is consistent with what the general statutes in 160D have laid out.
my 14 years on this board, I have found if somebody comes in, you guys take plenty of time to explain all this, so that's not going to change. Because, I mean, it can't get crazy there, so but as long as that's in place.
Yeah. Regarding the conflict of interest standards, as you'll note here within 160D, Section 109, there's different sections of standards for the different boards. Just for time's sake, I'll just cover the governing board, which is this board. Basically, it just states that the governing board members shall not vote on any legislative decision regarding a development regulation adopted pursuant to this chapter where the outcome of the matter being considered is reasonably likely to have a direct, substantial, and readily identifiable financial impact on the member. A governing board member shall not vote on any zoning amendment if the landowner or of the property subject to a rezoning petition or the applicant for a text amendment is a person with whom the member has a close familial, business, or other association or relationship. So again, this is very close to following essentially what we already do. Really no big change there, just making sure, again, for consistency's sake, we have this now listed in our ordinance. Moving on to requiring the oath of office for all board members. This is actually something that was new, but we knew that the 160D requirements were coming down the line. So actually starting last year in March, we had several new planning board members at that time. We went ahead and had them take an oath of office at that time. Since that time, we've had 3 new planning board members come on board, and we will have them take the oath of office prior to their July meeting. So we're already working to be in compliance with that one. We will have that listed in our ordinance. Updating the ETJ population, that's something that currently we already recognize proportional ETJ representation. Really the only change here is that it's just on the record that it requires us to, at the very least, every 10 years, which would be with the census, to calculate and determine what the town's ETJ population is and just ensure that at their representation is proportional based off the number of residents in the ETJ to the number of residents in town. So again, already something that we're doing, just putting on the books. Really the big difference here is they're just putting that mandate that it has to be done every 10 years. And finally, the zoning amendment requirements and consistency statements. I know you've heard me talk a little bit about the land use plan update that's underway right now. What this does will actually help to streamline some things for us. Currently, as you know, where we have a rezoning that comes through, I'll provide you all with a staff report, and I'll include with that a consistency statement. What Section 160D 605 does is allow zoning decisions that are made by a government board that may be in conflict with the existing adopted comprehensive land use plan, and we've had that situation happen before. It will have the same effect as to amend the future land use map, and there will be no additional requests for a plan amendment shall be required. So essentially, if the rezoning is requested, it's in conflict with our future land use map, The adoption of that or approval of that rezoning request will automatically kick in an update to the future land use map. So basically, it eliminates having to do two steps. One the rezoning, and two coming back to amend the map. So again, this is just helping to streamline this, so it saves us that extra step. And the last slide there, that goes into more detail. Essentially, I just summarize what's included, from that section of the 160D updates. So those are the major updates that you'll see in our ordinances. Again, if you have any questions, I'll be glad to take those at this time. But again, not something you're going to see a whole lot of changes. Really, no substantive change. These are just to come into compliance with the updates to the general statutes.
Anybody got any questions of Justin? I just got one before we open the public hearing. Somebody comes in, you'll be able to give them a copy of this too?
I will.
Okay, thank you. If you would stay close by.
Sure.
This is a public hearing. Anyone that would like to speak to this, if you would come up to the podium and give us your name, you'll be allowed to speak. Anybody wishing to speak? Anybody? Seeing none? Now that you're seated, you can come back. We close this. I now declare this public hearing closed. Board, do you have any questions of Justin? Questions, comments, or is there a motion?
Just for clarification's sake, we will need two motions. One to approve the amendments to Chapter 155, which is the subdivision ordinance, and then a separate, which would be for Chapter 157, the zoning ordinance. So we'll need 155.
155. Board, I need a motion for amendment 155.
I'll make a motion for amendment 155 for the subdivision ordinances, that we approve this.
Mr. Ellison's made a motion. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. I need a motion or comments for 157. Justin, would you state what that is one more time?
Chapter 157 is the amendments to the zoning ordinance.
Okay, the amendment to the zoning ordinance. Is there a motion?
I'll make that.
Mr. Jack has made a motion that we accept amendment 157. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Okay. Justin, I think it's still your turn at bat.
It is. Next item on the agenda is a request amendment to our flood damage prevention ordinance. And there's actually, when you arrived here this evening, there was an updated handout on the table. We received some additional feedback from North Carolina Emergency Management late Friday afternoon, just a couple of small additional items that they wanted us to amend. So we've included that updated ordinance for you this evening. Basically, the town of Farmville has long been a CRS community, which means this is the community rating system through the National Flood Insurance Program. Essentially, what CRS does is it allows for citizens who purchase flood insurance in the town to be able to receive a discount on their flood insurance so long as the town maintains a certain CRS score. Every 5 years, the town has to go through a site visit process with the folks from North Carolina Emergency Management to make sure that we're continuing to follow all of the steps that we put in place to help identify floodplain, flood hazard areas, and to make sure that we're keeping up with our developmental permits that we issue that may be located in the floodplain. We had our 5-year visit earlier this month. Based off that, there was some feedback that we received that we have a 30-day window, so we have until July 9th to address the comments. A couple of those were just some minor amendments that needed to be made to our flood damage prevention ordinance. That is what's before you this evening. I'll just go quickly through those, and again, if you have any questions, stop me as I'm going along. The first would be amending section 152.01, which is just the statutory authorization. And this actually comes back to, as we were discussing just a moment ago with chapter 160D. This, would just refer to the changes within chapter 160D as far as statutory authorizations. So again, nothing substantive here. This is just more so that update that we talked about, changing the references from 160A or 153A to 160D. Next would be amending section 152.06, which is general provisions. Again, this is to come into compliance with 160D. This amendment would strike the existing portion of the ordinance, which would be subsections A through D, replacing it with the statement that the special flood hazard areas are those identified under cooperating technical state agreement between the state of North Carolina and FEMA, and its FIS dated June 19th of 2020 for Pitt County and the associated D-firm panels, including any digital data developed as part of the FIS, which are adopted by reference and declared as a part of this ordinance, and all revisions thereto. So essentially, this language kind of streamlines what A through D had previously stated, again, to come into compliance with 160D.
Benefit for citizens, they save money, right?
That's right. Section 3, this is probably the biggest change substantially to the ordinance. Just going through quickly, this basically just states that electrical, heating, ventilation, plumbing, air conditioning equipment, and other service facilities shall be designed and are located at or above the regulatory flood protection elevation as defined in Chapter 152.04, the definitions. Really, the only change here is it actually set a standard. Previously, it just asked it to be elevates it to be where water could not enter. Now it's actually put a standard on there. It has to meet the regulatory flood protection elevation. So really just standardizing that and not leaving it, kind of, open-ended as far as, what the standard would be in terms of water not entering it. And then finally, the last portion of this amendment just refers to the specific standards of residential construction, non-residential construction, as well as manufactured homes. And again, this is just adding a reference to 152.04, the definitions, referencing back to that regulatory flood protection elevation.
Anybody got questions, Justin? Okay, Justin, we'll try this again. This is a public hearing. Anyone having any questions or would like to address this? Anyone? Anyone like to address the amendment for the flood damage prevention ordinance? Anyone? Seeing none, Justin, if we get you to come back, I declare this public hearing closed. Is there a motion to accept the amendment?
I'll make the motion we accept Amendment 152 for flood damage prevention.
Commissioner Smith has made the motion. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Thank you, Justin. Thanks. David, I put, the board put item 9 and 10 under the items for consent. Is that correct, that you brought in today?
That's fine.
We're okay. All right.
Yes, sir.
That's where they are. That brings us down to items of consent. Board, you see what's in front of you. Is there anything here that you'd like taken off, anything you'd like to add to, or any discussion, or is there a motion that we accept the items of consent?
I make a motion we accept the items of consent.
Commissioner Harris has made a motion that we accept the items of consent. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. The ayes have it. That brings us down to item number 9, items for discussion and decision. And the first thing on this is a presentation of the latest floor plan rendering for the new fire station headquarters. And Jimmy is with us. And before Jimmy, I turn it over to you, I just want to say one thing. I want to give some huge accolades to those of you that are here tonight for what this board has been through for 18 months or 2 years or longer, making what I refer to as a field trip. They've visited fire stations, they've looked at schematics, they have talked to people across the state in numerous meetings, and last Thursday, Chief Tommy Brady took his afternoon and came in with Jimmy Evanson. Where you at, Jimmy? There you are, with Jimmy. And we spent the afternoon coming in as per protocol to get a look and go over everything and ask a lot of questions and spend a lot of time doing it. So we are very, very happy, very pleased that we are at this point with our fire station. And I want to thank the fire team, the fire personnel for the many hours that you've put in this, because you knew what you needed. You knew where we'd have to be years from now. And I think the plans that we're going to see tonight will meet the needs of the fire department. So we thank you, Tommy. We thank you and your officers for giving us this opportunity. So with that being said, I'll turn it over to Jimmy now. Jimmy, show us what we're going to look like.
All right. Can I present from back here?
You do anything you want to do.
There's a light, that's what you said. Just that first lights in front of you. That's it. good for everybody. There's a lot of work that's gone into this, as the mayor discussed, and I don't want to spend a lot of time going through all the trials and tribulations to get to this point. So I just say that this is the site for the fire station, and one of our first tasks was to make sure that a one-story station could fit on this site. So we worked through that process, and we have determined a 5-bay, one-story station of approximately 20,000 square feet. It fit on the site with public parking in the front, firefighter parking in the back. We have to have some sort of stormwater mitigation system, so that would be back here. Main entry facing towards 258. Like I said, the guest parking here, and then also providing parking down Library Road. So we'd be paving Library Road to make that connection to the fire station. You can either go through this way or respond out the back or out the front, depending on what the emergency is. And that's all about response time at fire stations and getting out of the station as quickly as possible to the emergency. So we want to make sure we design a station that can accommodate that. So working with the fire department, we've gone through several renditions of the floor plan. This is the latest. We've discussed it to a great extent, meeting the needs of the fire department, main entry here. Then you have a training and community room available to the public. Then you limit your access to the actual fire station. You have offices that equate to the headquarters portion. We have a fitness room for the firefighters in order to stay active and fit and meet the requirements as firefighters. We have a day room, kitchen, and then the dorm rooms and toilets and showers in the back of the station here. And then over here will be the generator and the mechanical systems, all screened away from the public. So the only thing you'll see, as you'll see in the renderings here in a few minutes, is the beautiful side of the station. And then we have our 5 bays and then some storage over here to the left. So this is what we're envisioning early on what the station will look like. This is your main entry facing 258s right here. You have your public parking over here. You have your firefighter parking in the back, and then you have the apparatus bays facing this way for quick response. Over here will be the offices. Over here is the training room / community room. So as we move around the station, it's a combination of brick and a little bit of masonry and some metal panels. Is there any questions? There's just a real quick presentation. Is there anything you want to go back to or anything you want to see? Or anything that I can explain in further detail?
Jim, if you don't mind, I'd like to yield to the fire department. And Tommy, any John, any of you guys would like to weigh in on anything we've seen here?
First off, working with things it's very simple. What we envisioned and what they put together. We work hard with the full band, try to squeeze it as small as possible and not oversize and try to move forward. We're trying to plan for the next 50 to 75 years, knowing that we're going to eventually have paid people here and volunteering for that. So try to plan for that. Our now situation, try to plan for the future is very complicated, but with the help of Jimmy and our team, we know we're going that route. And with their experience in fire station design, it's been a simplistic process. Once we got the notion of what we need to look for, if it would fit the land. Once we found it fit the land, it's just a matter of tweaking it and making some pathways to and from the engine bay inside. And it's been a very simplistic process. Once we got that, the first criteria set that it would fit the one-story station, and that didn't be a problem. And serve the purpose of us going forward.
Well, I think you have given us something to look at that we need, and the plan that I've seen and the questions that were asked tells me that it will meet the needs for years to come, and I thank you for that. Board, anybody got anything they'd like to add at this point? Anybody like anything like that? Dave, is anything you can add to this?
I just wanted to mention too that the original iteration of this plan was slightly bigger, and through the work of the fire department and the architect and others, through some value engineering and scaling back where we could without sacrificing quality and functionality, this station is actually about 15% smaller than the original layout that they were working with from the beginning. So I think that bears some emphasis that, it still meets the fire department's needs. It's a 50 to 75 year lifespan building or more. But we did try to do it as, look out for get the best value that we could in the process.
According to my paperwork, it says here, presentation from project architects on the Farmville Fire Department headquarters project and provide feedback. What's the next step?
I think the next step would be voting to direct the architect to move on to the next stage in if this is the layout that's acceptable to the fire department and the board of commissioners, and authorizing them to continue to the next process step, which is construction design development stage.
Design development would be the next phase. We're in what we call schematic design now, and that's we're at the end of schematic design where we've ironed out the plan. We're providing a 50 to 75 year fire station, 21st century fire station built for the future, providing safety protocols we built within the station to keep firefighters safe and the new cancer initiative that's out there. So the next stage will be design development, moving through and getting into the details, the equipment and specifics.
I'm going to look with Commissioner Smith in a moment for a motion, since he serves as on that board, and I'm going to give him the opportunity to make that motion here in a second, because he's put a lot of hours into that. I'll look at the fire department one more time. Y'all good with this? Y'all good? All right. Is there a motion?
Mayor, I would like to make a motion that we accept the plans as presented by Davis Kane for our fire department.
And move forward.
Move forward to the next step.
You've heard the motion, board. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. Jimmy, guys, thank y'all so much. Thank you. Jimmy, thank you so much. Thank you. I think that does deserve some applause. I do. That brings us down to the next item, approval of final plat, Dalton's Cove subdivision, phase 2. Justin, you got this?
I do.
Okay.
So this next item is a request from the developer for the final approval of the final plat for Phase 2 of Dalton's Cove subdivision. As you may recall, at the April meeting, this board approved the final plat for Phase 1, which was the initial 12 lots. What we're looking at here, the request for Phase 2, this would be for the remaining 29 lots. With the average lot size of these 29 lots being 13,515 square feet. Project properties are zoned R8, which will allow for single-family residences. All lots meet the required lot dimensions as established by the town's zoning ordinance. NCDOT driveway permits have been approved and received by the town. All of these subdivision design standards and improvements have been met. None of the proposed street names would duplicate or be similar to existing street names in the town. And the town's engineer has made the recommendation to the town managers the amount of the performance guarantee. Myself and David discussed this morning. At this point, the developer has put up enough of the funds to cover the performance guarantee. And at this time, staff would recommend approval for the final plat for Phase 2 for Dalton's Cove.
Okay. Any questions of Justin? Any questions? Is there a motion that we approve the final plats?
Go ahead.
I'll make a motion we approve the final plat for Phase 2.
Commissioner Dixon's made a motion that we approve the final plat for Phase 2 of Dalton's Cove. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you. You got this one too, Justin?
I believe I do. Give my money's worth tonight.
Agenda item number 11, resolution declaring the intention of considering the closure of Greg Street extension. Went out there the other day. Have it, sir.
Yeah, so I know what you're getting at here, and I actually want to start by clarifying for those who are out there wondering what are we talking about. So if you get to the end of Gregg Street, you'll notice that as the street dead ends, there's a piece of property that goes between that before you get over to the next roadway there. What we're looking at there. Currently on the maps that are recorded with the Register of Deeds office, it's recorded showing a future proposed Gregg Street extension. The town has no plans to extend Gregg Street. There's no recommendation to do that. However, for the property owners who are just on the other side, just on the other side of Gregg Street, the town owns a piece of property that runs between the neighborhoods. But then as you get back over into the neighborhood there are a couple of properties there where the property owners would like to, or actually had initiated the request because they would like to separate or subdivide the properties, to potentially develop 2 more homes there. But before they can do that, the future roadway designation for Gregg Street extension has to be removed from the recorded tax map. So in order to do this, we have to go through a legislatively mandated process, which would start this evening by this board calling for and scheduling or adopting the resolution that's included in your packet, which would essentially schedule a public hearing that would be held at our next meeting on August 2nd. And the time between now and then, we would have to go out and post along the roadway, letting the public know of this closure of this proposed Gregg Street extension, as well as advertise this resolution 4 times in the local paper. But before we can move on to that step and actually hold a public hearing, this board must first adopt this resolution that essentially calls for the town to begin going through this process that I just explained.
Board, I went out. Did anybody else go out? Anybody got any questions of Justin? Or
Just to clarify, this was requested by the property owners in the Birchwood Drive area that wanted to...
That's correct. Yeah, they brought this to our attention, and we had a look at the tax map and realized what the issue was with the proposed extension still being located on the map that had been recorded.
Anybody else have a question? Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion that we
Schedule public hearing.
consider the closure of Gregg Street extension. First stated in
The endorsement of the resolution scheduling the public hearing. Okay. Motion's been made, the endorsement of the resolution scheduling the public hearing for August 2nd meeting with all protocol being met. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you. That brings us down, David, I think you got this. Board of Commissioners need to talk about the parking lot on Walnut Street adjacent to the Episcopal Church and the Duke Building.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, members of the board. If you recall last meeting, I believe it was last meeting, we had a renewal of a parking lot lease for the portion closest to Church Street. There's a couple lots that the town leases. One roughly between the library and the back of the buildings on Main Street and Church Street, and then over to roughly the edge of the parking lot, that side of the parking lot for the library. There's also a parking lot between the Episcopal Church and the back of the buildings that face Wilson Street. And that's the one that's up for renewal here tonight. Also goes to basically the rear, some of the buildings cutting up on Main in that area. Over in that area, the pharmacy would also extend all the way back that way. So pretty decent sized lot. I think it's 49 parking spaces. And so that is a 5-year lease. It expires June 30th. So the lease terms are the same as the previous lease that is about to expire. They did, since there had not been any change in the price in more than 10 years, they did ask for the fee for this lease to be increased. So other than that, everything else is still another renewal for 5 years under the same terms as before.
Board, any questions of David on this?
I just have one quick question. Is this the parking lot I asked to be striped recently that we'd had the people?
That's part of that lot, yes. It goes up to some of the parking spaces that actually are accessed by the alley.
Okay.
Yes,
Thank you.
ma'am.
What was the percentage of the increase that they asked for?
It's doubling the price. It goes from, it was $5,880, and it goes to $11,760. So it's going from, well, $10 to $20 a parking space.
But that was in place for a very long time, right?
Right, over 10 years. Yeah, it's been,
Very long time.
it has not gone up at all.
That's a good value.
I mean, it's a pretty critical lot. I know I park in it literally every time I go to the library. I'm in that particular lot. Anybody coming in off of Walnut Street's going to use that lot as opposed to the other.
I think we've leased that for as long as I can remember.
Right, and it may be something that, and you know, we've talked about it. There's actually I've talked to them about potentially trying to purchase it down the road. The other one that was just renewed last meeting, I did talk with, that's a trust that has that, or from BB&T, and they didn't want to sell it right away. Matter of fact, if you remember my discussion, it actually, the option to buy it was taken out of the agreement by the owner. But that individual, I understand, is very elderly, like in her 90s, or in his 90s, excuse me. And so there may be an option to buy that soon. Not soon, but, you know, just during the lease term, let's say that. Not wishing ill on anyone, but there's a possibility that it may become available during the 5-year lease term. Now, this one obviously is several parties involved that I don't think are going anywhere in the next 5 years.
Is there a motion? Discussion or motion?
I will make a motion that we accept the terms of the contract for the parking lot from the Allen Family Holdings, David and Marion Stowe Holdings, for the next 5 years.
Mr. Davis has made a motion that we approve the extension of the existing lease agreement with the Davis Enterprises for the parking lot adjacent to the public library and Episcopal Church. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you. That brings us down to citizen comments. Anyone having anything, questions you've heard here tonight that you may not understand or would like to know more about? Anybody having anything? Anybody? Seeing none, I want to thank everybody for coming. You're welcome to stick around, but we're going to be going into closed session in a moment. And as directed by North Carolina General Statute 143-318-11A, C, personnel matter. You're welcome to stay. Is there a motion that we go into closed session?
Make a motion, we go into closed session.
There's a motion, we go into closed session. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. The ayes have it. We are in closed session. We won't be long, so stick around if you'd like.